Hello, Archana. Archana. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I talked with Principal Secretary.
Yes.
He will join, but he's a little bit busy with some official. By 7:35, he'll speak. He has asked Rituparna Bhattacharya to start with first. Okay.
No problem.
So she will start, and by the meantime, I will just declare it to be open while giving my welcome address.
Okay, fine.
I think that will be fine.
Yeah.
He will be in the line, but he will speak at 7:35.
Okay, fine. That's okay. So, Debastuti?
Yeah, sure. I'm starting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. A very good evening, everyone, and wishing all a very happy International Women's Day. Coinciding with today's date, CTEF Assam chapter is organizing today's international webinar on the topic Positioning Women for National Development. We have invited as chief guest Dr. Kalyan B. Chakravarti, Sir, Principal Secretary, Higher Education, Government of Assam, and as guest of honor, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya from SFHEA, Newcastle, UK. We would like to start today's webinar by playing our state anthem. I'd like to request Gratia Technology to play the video. Thank you, Gratia Technology. I now invite Professor Nilima Bhagavati Ma'am, International Secretary General CTEF and Chairman CTEF Assam Chapter, to give her welcome address.
Thank you, Devastuti. Our chief guest, he's already in the line, invited chief guest of today's international webinar, Dr. Kalyan B. Chakravarti, IAS, Principal Secretary, Government of Assam. Our guest of honor, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya, Senior Fellow, Advanced Higher Education, UK, and Editor-in-Chief, Journal Space and Culture, India. Participants who are in this link and who will be joining in E2, and they have in fact joined, and in Facebook. Participants, the entire CTEF family members, ladies and gentlemen, a very good, warm evening to you all, and namaste. Let me take the privilege to welcome you all at the very outset. In fact, it's a day, a significant day, International Women's Day, and we have taken the privilege to organize today's webinar, synchronizing with the theme. Friends, after some brainstorming done, just a thought suddenly in my mind that why not a theme on positioning women for national development? In fact, wherever I go or we go, and also in most of the seminars and symposiums, we keep on talking about the problems, the situations the women are facing. But it is high time, friends, that we have to think about the way forward to bring out the women, how we can place them in the national front, how we can place them in the society, how we can identify their potentialities, their talents, and help them, assist them. Friends, International Women's Day doesn't mean I find it in my mind that it is we people only, the women, have to go and compete with men. No, it is not that. A bird cannot fly with one wing, require two wings. So also we have to go hand in hand with men to give contribution and to work for the development of the society and in our everyday life. Therefore, the position of women, as is taught, is to be very sort of in a very pathetic condition. Yes, I say in some cases it is, they are being deprived, but it is now gradually improving as we find it. Just today, let me just share with you this wonderful experience I had. I went to a rural place in the morning today. I often go there, meet the children and do some work, but today was something special I never imagined, I never thought. I went and met. There are only about hardly 15 to 20 women in that village. I met them and told them that I have come to you just to appraise you about Nari Divok. They were surprised. They don't know what is Nari Divok, what is International Women's Day. But I told them, look, why this day has the significance and what are their contributions. Believe me, my friends, I was surprised to see there were more men than women in the small meeting. The men that listened, they also heard for the first time. And after speaking with them for about 25 to 30 minutes, the man folk, it was there, they came out and say, Baido, we heard you and we have heard for the first time. Definitely, we'll let our women to explore their own talents, we'll support them. The tears rolled in my eyes. We'll support them and bring them out. So this I felt, like it is we people who have to give the support to bring them out. Each and every one has talent. In the cross section of the society, if you go, you will find each and every woman has talent. It is we people, it is we the society, the government, all the stakeholders, they have to think about bringing them forward and assisting them. Today, a message came in my phone. I read it was a message somebody gave, a quote from Sadhguru. And so beautifully, I liked it so much. I can't resist, I'll just read it out, a small one. Rather than trying to fit a woman into a man's world, we must create a society where masculine and feminine have an equal role to play. Yes. This is what is the significance of today's webinar. So after that brainstorming, the positioning of women for national development has come. And that is why today this webinar is extremely important to give us a direction, to give us a way forward, to enlighten us with thoughts, constructive ideas, innovative ideas. We have invited two scholars, in fact, to present before us the insightful, the impactful opinions, the suggestions. One of them, the chief guest of today's function, Dr. Kailan B. Chakravarti, IAS, and the another one, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya, the fellow, higher education, UK. Both have vast experience in this area. And obviously, we'll be enlightened after hearing them. And if we have any sort of small questions, we can also interact with them. So with this idea, this webinar has been hosted today by CTEF with the collaboration of Gratia Technology, Guwahati. Gratia Technology is our webinar, our seminar, our symposium partner, our activities partner, and they are assisting us in these presentations and helping us in all technological matters. And I do hope every participant who are here, they will be highly enlightened here. I will not take long because we want to hear more our speakers. So friends, just let me brief a little bit. I've been always saying about Council for Teacher Education. This is in fact one additional program which we are doing on synchronizing International Women's Day today. This is what every teacher, every person in the cross-section society should know. Why we are observing this day. What is the significance? Otherwise, every day is a Women's Day. Every day from morning to night, we keep on working and do work. That's fine. But what is the main significance? So that is what is important. This is the justification today's webinar it carries. So CTEF has been doing lots of activities throughout the year. We're reaching the teachers, we're reaching the parents, we're reaching the children from different aspects, from education, from study, from giving them knowledge, from training them. And today's theme, positioning women for national development, will awaken them. Will awaken them, I believe, will awaken them. Yes, they have the responsibility, they have the accountability to contribute to the nation, but at the same time, they should be identified and they should be assisted. They should be helped by the government. They should be helped by the stakeholders and each and every one of us who are here. I think I will not make it very long. Our principal secretary, sir, he said, I rang him up, that our second resource person, the guest of honor, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya, she will start first, then he's already in the line, then he will speak. So abiding by his words, I am just closing the justification of holding this webinar and declare that this webinar is being inaugurated. With these words, I thank you all. Sorry for the cough. I'm just suffering from very bad cough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful welcome address. I now invite Dr. Archana Bhattacharjee, ma'am, Vice Chairman, CTEF Assam Chapter, to give introduction of our esteemed guest and also to carry forward today's agenda.
Thank you, Devastuti. So good evening, namaste, and welcome everyone. I really feel honored to get the opportunity to welcome once again our guest of honor and to get the opportunity to introduce her too. So let me tell you, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya holds a PhD from the School of Geography, Politics and Sociology, University of Newcastle, UK. She is a senior fellow, Advanced Higher Education, UK, and in 2018, she became an associate fellow from the same accredited body of higher education, that is Advanced Higher Education, UK. She works as a research consultant and editor-in-chief, Journal Space and Culture, India. She renders volunteering services at Prague Foundation for Capacity Building, a public charitable trust of India and Alliance for Community Capacity Building in Northeast India. He has over 60 publications in outlets of international repute. And it will take me a long time if I start naming each and every single book that she has published. And we want to save as much time as possible and give it to the resource person. for the presentation. So now I invite Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya to give her presentation. Over to you, Dr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Archana Baido, for such a lovely, introduction about me. And thank you, Council for Teachers Education, for having me. I'm really indebted to Professor Nilima Bhagavati, you, and Devastuti Sharma. I think you all are organizers of this Council for Teachers Education. So it's a lovely evening. By the way, it's afternoon over here. So anyway, let me actually, without wasting much time, let me share my presentation. I think you can see my presentation.
See?
Hello? Can
Yes,
you see?
yes.
Yeah, So as I have told about the topic, so my topic is positioning women in national development. So let me do the slideshow.
Can you do the full screening? Yes,
Yes,
good. Yes, good.
Yeah. So this is actually the title of my presentation: Positioning Women in National Development. So today it's International Women's Day. So we have been celebrating International Women's Day for almost 10 years today. 10 or 12 years today. So since over a century, we have been celebrating UN Women's Day. International Women's Day. So this year, UN Women International Women's Day theme is gender equality towards today for a sustainable tomorrow. So gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, that notion has been also going on for quite some time. It has been almost 50 years, I think. 50 years since 1975, it has been going on. So today, as Professor Bhagavati told that, she got a nice quote from Sadhguru and she has said it. So similarly, I got my WhatsApp was flooded with International Day messages. So I also got a very beautiful, wish like on International Women's Day with acronym of women. So W is for wonderful wife. I'm not sure, majority of the participants are, I think, women over here, but we cannot claim that we are wonderful wife. But I think surely our, husbands will be able to tell. But I can tell one thing, that at this point of time, when I am delivering this lecture, there would be millions of women who are being victims of domestic violence. So O is an outstanding friend. Yes, women are outstanding friends. M is a marvelous daughter, A is an adorable sister, N is a nurturing mother. So I'll use this in my talk today, how there are paradoxes between M, A, and N. I'll be talking about few legislations. So anyway, so that is a nice, actually, a greeting about International Women's Day. So today I'll be using three concepts. One is women in development, then women and development, that is WED concept, and gender and development, that is GET concept, how these three concepts developed. Then I will actually come to repositioning women in national development into today's topic. So the idea that women is a part of development took place during the context of United Nations, a decade of women from 1976 to 1985. So the slogan was equality, development, and peace, were the slogan that were proposed at the International Women's Year conference in Mexico City in 1975.
Please mute your microphones, those who are you. Yes.
So the idea of women in development approach originated as a result of three major feminist movements waves concerning feminine conditions. So there are three feminist waves. That is the first wave of feminism, second wave of feminism, and the third wave of feminism. The first wave of feminism actually started, we all know, It started in USA in the 19th century. And 19th century with the Seneca Falls movement. Then it was the first women's movement the first wave was also known as women's suffrage movement, which originated in North America back in the late 19th century, when women fought for equal right to vote and participate in politics. So that is in a nutshell about the first wave of feminism, first wave of feminism. Then the second wave of feminism was in the 70s, just at the start of 70s, that is the radical feminist movement. The second wave of feminism sought to deal with remaining social and cultural inequalities women were facing in their everyday affair, that is the sexual violence or domestic violence, then the reproductive rights, actually the abortion was illegal in many countries, still it is illegal, then the sexual discrimination they face at work, and glass ceilings, the different forms of glass ceilings that women face while going to work. So the second wave of feminism was very, very controversial. However, the women's movement, it was a radical women's movement. So the women's movement was very influential at the United Nations, and they organized the first global conference on women in 1975, as I have already said, at Mexico. The conference sought to address nations' role on fighting gender inequalities and support women's rights. So then UN actually recognized the movement, and they said that we are going to support, will help you fighting gender inequalities and your rights, fundamental rights of women. And the third was influenced by this women in development concept, was influenced by Esther Bossorov's book, Women's Role in Economic Development. She actually mentioned that women is a part of development anyway. They do a lot of work in the agriculture, but their work are still unrecognized, goes unrecognized, and that is being unrecognized still in India. Many women in the rural areas we see, they work in the agricultural fields. And if you go to the hilly areas of Uttarakhand and all, you will see it is the women who does everything, from seeding to plowing to harvesting. They do everything, but their role is still being unrecognized in the economy. So this book sent a shockwave through northern development agencies and humanitarian organizations. So this is a nutshell about women in development concept. But when women in development concept actually gained momentum, but as it gained momentum, the critics they found that that although women have women's work in the Western world have been recognized, whether it is in the agriculture or whether it is helping as a domestic cook or as a cleaner, but they actually face a lot of inequalities while going from their workplace to home. So that is the gendered inequalities. While working in the public space for somebody else, they also need to go and do their household chores. So it was just because it is the man's world. Men, they go to the work, they do their workplace to work, but at home they come and they sit sometimes with the newspaper, or now they watch telly or play on the video games, but it is the women who has to perform the domestic household tasks. So the concept of women and development came. So the WEED approach helped to ensure the integration of women into the workforce and increase the level of productivity in order to improve their lives. However, critics feel that this perception is very Western, as it fails to acknowledge the collective and cultural concerns of women in the developing world. Indeed, it fails to understand the dynamics of the private sphere, but focus solely on the private sphere. As I have been telling that the private sphere, actually, home is not always a place where you hang your heart. Home, the private space can be also a space of contestation. Private space can be also a space where you face domestic violence. our private space could be a space sometimes where you cannot relieve your stress, but you become too stressful with your different forms of household works if you have nobody to help with. So although it says it is very Western, but even in the Western world, women face a lot of stress because of the double burden at both their place of work as well as in their home. So and plus it is not only the women who faces inequalities. If we see it is not only the women who face gender inequalities and become a victim of patriarchy or capitalism, but if we see class-wise, if we see class-wise or caste-wise, we see that both men and women, they are victims of both patriarchy and capitalism. So the critics again found that even the women in development concept is not very suitable to bring the notion of development in the agenda. So they thought that it is the notion of gender which should be in place. So gradually from I didn't come into the women. So that from WEED it came GAD. As I have again, let me just repeat it. Women and Development approach originated back in 1976 as it sought to discuss women's issues from a new perspective. The school of thought realized that women have always been an integral part of development process in the global system of exploitation and inequality, and it is from this perspective that we need to examine why women have not been benefited from the development strategies of the past decades, that is by questioning the sources of nature of women's subordination and oppression. As I have already told, that the WEED concept, that is women in development concept actually recognized women's participation in the public sphere, but it did not recognize women's participation in the private sphere, and where women faced a lot of inequalities and became victims, not only symbolic victims, but victims of patriarchy and capitalism. So from women in development, the concept of women and development came, and from women and development, as I said, that it is not only the women. If you see women as a class, and if we just break down the classes of women, and if we break down the classes of men, and in Indian system we have the caste as well as the religion, which play a very important role, a significant role in shaping overall women's or men's development. So these concepts, so the critics thought that it should be gender and development, and so the gender and development is a much used notion in today's concept, and these two notions, WEED and WED, are still there, but nowadays with UN Sustainable Development Goals, where gender inequality is the SDG 5 goal, it is the GAD concept which is being used in today's environment or today's climate. So the GAD approach focus on gender rather than women, since the category women were only half the story, but women in relation to man and the way in which relations between these two categories are socially constructed. The GAD approach is different from WEED in three respects. First, it shifts the focus from women to gender and identifies the unequal power relations between men and women. Second, it re-examines all social, political, and economic structures and development policies from the perspective of gender differentials. And lastly, it recognizes that achieving gender equality demands transformative change in gender relations from household to global level. So these are, in theory, it looks very good, but in practicality, to bring in change, it's much more difficult. And although we have GAD approach, still we have we had sustainable United Nations Millennium Goals until 2015, but none of the countries were achieved the goals because they were either too ambitious or flawed. And since 2015 again till 2030, as the sustainable development goals have been adopted, and where SDG 5 is meant for gender equality. Again, I'm not sure by 2030 whether UN will be able to achieve SDG 5, or in that case, all the SDGs. It looks very ambitious, and with the pandemic ongoing, I don't think so SDGs will be achievable by end of 2030. But nonetheless, coming to today's topic, before I start today's topic, let me give you a brief background of South Asia. South Asia means the countries of India, Pakistan, Nepal, Afghanistan, and Maldives and Sri Lanka. I think these are the countries of South Asia. So close to 81% of all employed persons in India make a living by working in the informal sector, with only 6.5% in the formal sector and 0.8% in the household sector. Among the 5 South Asian countries, informalization of labor is highest in India. I'll be talking about this. Informalization of labor is highest in India and Nepal, but I'll be talking about India. Even in Bangladesh, informalization of labor is much lower. It is 48.9%. In Sri Lanka, it is 60.6%. And in Pakistan, it is 77.6%, doing much better on this front. Sorry. In fact, formal employment in Bangladesh is highest in the region at 13.5%, but it is also as high household employment of 26.7%. So before I go to repositioning women in national development, let me give you a brief overview of Indian women in general. Women make up 48% of the Indian population, but have not benefited equally from India's economic growth. We know female child mortality is still a grave concern. So many, with over 239,000 girls under the age of 5 dying each year. So our actually mindset is still, we adhere to boys in our Indian culture. So the girl child is always neglected or even killed before she is being born. So although female foeticide is considered illegal, but it's going under the carpet. So this is again a huge debate, and there could be a research, 3 or 4 research paper on this topic. But today, just I'm giving you an overview. 65% of women are literate as compared to 80% of men. So India has amongst the lowest female labor force participation rates in the world. Less than a third of women, that is 15 years or older, are working or actively looking for a job. So women actually do not work for money, or they do not look for a job because there are many constraints for a woman to go and look for a job. So which I'll be discussing in today's presentation, in the next few slides of my presentation. So this is a bit of reflection of Indian women's position in the development process. If we want women to be in the development process, we have to give them the opportunity to participate in the national development process. No doubt, by women being a mother, a housewife, she contributes indirectly to the national development, but that is not even counted. Because if you see a house, if you see a simple housewife, it is, if the man of the household goes to work, it is the housewife who actually is at the backbone of the family. She actually helps the man of the house to go out and work. Similarly, if a mother or a non means we talk about working mother, that is a wrong concept for me, because the mother works from morning 6 o'clock to late 9, 10, 11 o'clock before she goes to bed. Because even if she doesn't go and perform some economic activity, but being a mother in the household, she prepares her children to go to school, drops them off, brings them to their household. So she has been performing indirectly into the development process. But here we are talking about bringing women in the national development. In the process of, we are talking about some economic activity, means women should earn money. Otherwise, if women's contribution to national development, although they are doing it indirectly, are not counted because our drishti is bahirmukhi, means we always see outside what is happening outside. We don't see in the what is happening in the private sphere. So anyway, the participation at work for men in India stood at 67% in 2022 and increased from 2021, which stood at 64%. In 2021, the percentage of men working outside the home was 64%, which has increased slightly to 67%. A fluctuating trend emerged in the participation rate of this segment of India's workforce since 2016. In 2016, India had a lot going on. I think we had demonetization. Because of demonetization, big factories got closed and many people lost their jobs. So there were fluctuation about if we consider the work participation. Meanwhile, the participation at work for women in the country plummeted from around 36% in 2021 to a little over 33% in 2022. 2022, it's just few months. It's not even, but by the end of this year, it might be same 36%. I'm not sure about that. But till 2022, I got this statistics from a website called Statistician. So most employed women in India are in low skill work, such as farm and factory labor and domestic help, sectors that have been hit hard by the pandemic. So these are the women, although work, if we see women working in the organized sector, it is not even, I think, 5% or 4%. But government has been bringing out legislations for this work, women working in the organized sector, but government from since 1947 have not been thinking over these women who have been working in the low skilled sector, such as the farm and factory labor, domestic help sectors. These are the sectors that have been hit hard by the pandemic. We even cannot actually imagine the extent of suffering these women have got, because we don't feel the pain, because we are middle class women. We cannot actually even feel their pain. So the consortium of Indian industries, which represents over 1 million small firms, said women make up 60% of the job losses. When it comes to both men and women losing their job, it is proportionately, the percentage of women losing their jobs is always higher when compared to the men, because women have their own constraints of coming to the workplace. Because she is a mother, she has to look after her child. If somebody is sick at home, it is the mother who has to, it is our wife who has to look after the sick person in the family. It is the male who always can come out to work, although as a father or mother, he will have some mental pressure, but he can come and join the workforce. But women has to be at home looking after the family. So another survey by Center for Sustainable Employment at Azim Premji University found that 47% of women workers who lost their job between March and December 2020 even before that is even before the first wave of the second wave of a pandemic in 2021, they were made permanently redundant. Just think that 40% of the women working in the informal sector were made permanently redundant. So that compared with around 7% of male workers, many of whom were able to either return to their old jobs or take up independent work like selling vegetables. So now, as per today's question, positioning women in national development, I have actually slightly modified it. I given repositioning women in national development via an integrated approach. So whatever I say over here, there has to be some form of integration in order to bring both women in the organized as well as in the unorganized sector. Government has been since 1947, we got independence. All those legislations that government has been making, women-centric legislations, that has been in favor of only 4 or 5% of women working in the organized sector, but women working in the informal sector have never been cared by the government. But government has to care for their women working in the informal sector because they either directly or indirectly, they do contribute to the GDP, gross development product, GDP, as well as in that process they contribute to national development. So formalization of the informal sector and social protection. My first topic will be that formalization of the informal sector and social protection. Then maternity leave and childcare. Then I'll be talking about sexual harassment of women at the workplace. So formalization of the informal sector and social protection, generation of a government mandated database. So almost 80% of workers in India, both male and female, they work in the unorganized sector. So, but there is no government mandated database. So I don't have to give evidence for this. The migrant crisis that surfaced just few days after the first lockdown in March is a witness to that. Because had there been some form of formalization or some form of social protection, though, for those migrant workers where both forms of gender, both male and female, work, then that crisis would not have surfaced. So for last 70 or 75 years, India was doing nothing for this informal sector. But the process was started in 2019, just before the pandemic. Modi government had started that, but they couldn't have actually bring into surface before that the pandemic hit, and the government was hit back. The process of creating a national database for informal sector workers. So how they would go? There are 3 stages. Wage code to be created. Beneficiaries for minimum wages would be identified as proposed under wage code. That would be done through Aadhaar card. Then social security code to be created, via which beneficiaries would be directly transferred, and proposed database to help the government frame better policies. So these are few stages through which the government can create actually formalize the informal sector, and but formalize the informal sector, but there has to be some form of social protection. So how this social protection can be could be given to those working in the informal sector. Formalization of the informal sector and social protection. Incorporation of some stringent labor laws for the protection of the informal workforce. Right at work for the employees. Currently, what is happening? That as soon as the employees of the informal sector, if if the employer doesn't like an employee, they can actually say, fire him out or fire her out. There is no right for the employees. Then contract for work, or whether it is regular or contractual, there has to be some form of formal contract. Then facilities provided by the employer. You just can't employ somebody. You have to give them some form of facilities. So, so it is the employer. Otherwise, the employer wants his or her employee in the informal sector to work 24/7. At night also, if he wants to, he might actually wake up the employee and say that you go and do this work. That happens to our domestic helps. They work 24/7 if they live with us, and they don't even get a holiday for themselves. The number of work hours at work, wages and social security, everything has to be actually formalized. Even if the domestic help that we get in our everyday households, there has to be some form of number of work hours at work. Then wages have to be given to them, that if they work, it means if they are of certain age, they have to be given that type of wage. Then some form of social security. Social security at domestic households, it would be a bit difficult for the government to do it, but there should be some form of formal agencies who can actually do bring some form of social securities for this domestic social security. All these steps would probably help the informal worker gain somewhat meaningful protection. So now let us go to the maternity leave. So since India became independent just after a few, I think almost 2 decades, they brought out this Maternity Benefit Act 2017. As I said, this Maternity Benefit Act at that point of time, I think even 2% of women also didn't work in the organized or the formal sector. But that act was for those percentage of women. The percentage of women working in the informal sector were never thought of. But in 2017, this maternity bill was amended, and the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961 gave 3 months of leave, paid leave, to the women working either working under the government or semi-government offices. But that has been actually extended from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. The law is eligible for only those who work in an organization with a minimum of 10 employees. That means if an organization has less than 10 employees, then that law is not applicable. So how paradoxical it is. On one side, we want women to be in the development agenda, and on the other side, we are not doing enough for the women to be in that development. Or yes, we can say that yes, India has a maternity act. It is very good. Even USA doesn't have a maternity act, despite being the world's largest democracy and the world's wealthiest nation. But if you are doing something, why you are doing it half-heartedly? Do it with full heart. It is like this Maternity Act. It looks good on paper, but it's half-baked. The prenatal leave is also increased from 6 to 8 weeks. A woman who is already a mother of 2 children is eligible for 12 weeks of maternity leave from the 3rd child. If a woman adopts a child under the age of 13 months, then she is eligible for a leave of 12 weeks. So these are the clauses of the maternity leave, but nowhere in this act you find about women working in the unorganized sector. Think about the domestic help, or even think about a woman working in the farm or in the factory. She is, at some point of time, she would be a mother. At some point of time, she would fall sick. I'm not talking about sick. I'm talking about means she would become mother. What would happen to the child? Or how after giving birth, she would go to work? Is it ever possible for anybody to do that? That is why in India we have the maternal mortality rate and child mortality rate so high? So all these things we need to think. I think Council for Teachers Education, they must come to the fore to take these things forward, these paradoxes forward. If we want to put really women in if we want to put position of women in national development. Then I say childcare. Just giving birth to a child and becoming a mother is not enough. You have to look after the child. How will a woman working in the informal sector will look after the child? A woman, I feel for the women being means domestic help. She would be a mother of a child. She would leave the mother the whole day with somebody else, the informal carer, either her sister or her her own mother. Then she would come and do the household works of some middle class family. There also her treatment will not be good, and she would go at night. If she is a part-time worker, then she would do probably the household work of her own home. But just imagine how the child of that mother will be raised. She would not be that child would not get any love from her mother, or that child that child would fail to actually receive the love from his or her mother. Then the values, if it's not giving birth to a child is probably the easiest thing, but raising them to be a proper human being and a proper citizen of the proper citizen of tomorrow, it is a huge responsibility. So how the child will learn the values? Because the sister or the informal carers, whether it is the sister of that lady or whether it is the mother of that lady, will have limited power to to give the values to that child. So those children are also, we have to think of those children as well while doing about this, these type of legislations. So I say these legislations we do have, they are very good in theory, but they are half-baked legislations. In case where the nature of work assigned to a woman is of such nature that she may work from home, the employer may allow her to do so after availing the maternity benefit for such a period on such conditions as the employer and the women may mutually agree. So this is a childcare norm which has been introduced for working women in the organized sector. It looks very good. Yes, for 2 years, a woman can look after the child. But I am talking about women of the informal sector. Then in the formal sector, for those women working in the formal sector, every establishment having 50 or more employees shall have the facility of Gratia within such a distance as may be prescribed either separately or along with common facilities. So Gratia facility has been described in the Maternity Act. Provided that an employer shall allow 4 visits a day to the Gratia by the women, which shall include the interval for rest allowed to her. So including her rest, women can actually visit the Gratia to look after her child for 4 times a day. This is again, I'm talking about the small percentage of women working in the organized sector, but the vast majority of women working for the informal sector, they have no support or no care by the government. Every establishment shall intimate in writing electronically to every woman at the time of her initial appointment regarding every benefit available under this act. So the small percentage of women, whether it is 5 or 6% of women working in the organized sector, they can avail these facilities. But again, the vast amount of women working in the unorganized or informal sector, they are devoid of these facilities. So I think this Maternity Act, yet it looks very good on paper, and we can boast we do have a maternity act, but just excuse me. Hello, Suman. I'm in a meeting. I'll call you later. Excuse me, I had a call. So this childcare facilities, I'm saying with this means it is actually means it benefits a small percentage of Indian women working in the formal sector. So this sexual harassment of women at the workplace. So after if we look back in 2012, India actually faced a brutal, we heard a story of a woman who was brutally killed. She was called Nirbhaya. Nirbhaya. So after the death of Nirbhaya, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act was brought in 2013. So one of the clauses of this act was that any establishment, irrespective of whether it is a private or public, with 10 or more employees, must have an internal complaints committee, that is called ICC. So, but the findings of the 2015 research, it is a bit old research, but I couldn't find a new research, which was actually conducted by FICCI, that is Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The title of the research was Fostering Safe Workplace, which actually found out that 36% of Indian companies and 25% of multinational companies operating in India have failed to constitute an ICC. So these things, although the government has put a legislation in place, but this, the internal ICC has not been actually constituted by these companies. So this is a fate of the women working in the formal sector. Just think about the women working in the informal sector, just working in the factory. If she is being harassed by her employer or by her fellow colleague, then she is not in a position to tell anybody. And sexual harassment is still a taboo. If the women complains somebody, then she will be blamed. She would be blamed herself that you are means it would actually means she would be blamed on her behavior, on her means like she is a bad woman. She will be tagged as a bad woman. So that is why you have been sexually harassed. So it is very difficult for women to talk about sexual harassment at workplace. This is the fate of the women. Means yes, we had Me Too movement, no doubt. The Me Too movement is thus triggered in means India as well. But I know many predators. When the Me Too movement actually geared up in India, they were quite actually scared. I heard many of them talking also, "Ye kya aa gaya Me Too movement? Ye kya hai?" Means they were scared that they might not be accused of harassing somebody else. But over time, it has only M.K. Akbar has been actually accused and he was removed from his job. But after that, what has happened? Nothing has happened. Everything has been swept under the carpet. So things are not that it sustains. People also means it is the women who has always been blamed for even sexual harassment at workplace. But the sexual harassment at workplace is not only for women. Even in today's climate, I keep on hearing that even men are being targeted by their bosses or by their fellow colleagues. So this Me Too movement actually was for both men and women. But since sexual harassment is synonymous to women, we connect it with women anyway. So these are the few legislations I have talked about. So this is overall my presentation of repositioning women in national development. So if we want women in national development, we have to have legislations that actually caters to all working women, whether they are working in the private sector, whether they are working in the public sector, whether they are working in the informal sector or in the formal sector. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
So thank you, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya, for your wonderful presentation. Starting from the initial phase of the women's movement in the West to the position of women at present in India, you have highlighted some very important gaps which needs our immediate attention for overcoming some of the challenges we are facing right now. Yes, women's work, both at home and workplace, generally goes unrecognized. So women in the true sense actually cannot fully contribute even now towards national development, even if they want to. So an integrated approach, as we have so rightly pointed out, is certainly the need of the hour for repositioning women in national development. Our legislations are, I like that, are, as you have said, are half-baked and needs overhauling to bring about any positive changes. Anyway, there are so many important aspects that you have highlighted. You have given us some very important food for thought, and we'll ponder on it. And when we come to the discussion hour, I'm sure our participants may have a few queries for you. But right now, I would like to welcome our next speaker, our chief guest, Dr. Kalyan B. Chakrabarti. Sir, are you online? Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
So I'd just like to give you a brief introduction. Dr. Kalyan B. Chakrabarti, IAS, Assam Meghalaya Cadre, 1995, is at present Principal Secretary to the Government of Assam Higher Education Department. He is a BTech from IIT, Chennai, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and Bachelor of Law from Osmania University. He has held several important positions to the Government of Assam and the Government of India. He is the Director General of EPTRI and holding the additional charge of Special Secretary, Environment Assam, and successfully administered relief and rehabilitation work, and has successfully again handled many extremist issues. Dr. Chakrabarti has implemented World Bank AACP project, which improved the livelihood parameters and was appreciated for his work as the Commissioner of Taxes and for his work as a project director for World Bank projects. He has also organized World Women Boxing Championship at Guwahati. We are really very happy about that, sir. He has also developed spatial provision for food processing in industrial policy. He has been instrumental in the signing of the agreement by India with Bangladesh for opening up new sea river route for transportation of food grains. He has also initiated fresh initiatives in IT, both in the tax department and FCI, which has become national models. He has represented the government of Telangana at COP21 Paris and the side events of the Clean Energy Ministerial at Beijing, China. Well, so that was indeed an eye-opener for most of the participants who do not have any idea about the kind of work you are doing, sir. So this was for their benefit. And now we are all very keen to hear your views on the topic selected for our international seminar, that is positioning women for national development and the way forward. So it's over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you also for accommodating the fact that I joined in a bit late because of various reasons. I thank the host and yourself, Neelima Bhagat madam, specifically for inviting me for this occasion. So it's such a huge topic when we talk about gender equality for a sustainable future. And since I'm mostly related to education, which probably is the crux of the entire issue, I'd like to begin there. I also was fortunate to listen to the previous speaker who did touch upon various factors which which have an impact on gender equality and therefore impact on our future and our present. So historically, of course, gender inequality has been the norm, and we are so immune to this inequality. And I can speak on behalf of the male gender that we almost take it as a sort of a given. In fact, if you look at many of the movies that are today super hits on the in the Indian silver screens, like I was watching movies like Arjun Reddy or I think it not knowing the Hindi version of it, or Pushpa. We see that a woman would get raped and the hero just hands her over a coat and then moves on with his life. Or like some of the things which are like, which are shockers to me, because I don't see too many movies, as to how women can accept this kind of a portrayal. In fact, the one of the producers of the movie, or the father of the protagonist, Allu Arjun, is a very close friend of mine. So I asked him, why do you make such movies? He says, like, these are movies which are mass movies. So many people like them. You see, everybody dances to the tunes. And I was saying that, and he asked me this question, like, I'm sure you wouldn't have liked the movie. Or I always would like ask them that you have the power to influence the way a boy looks at a girl, and the way he takes it for granted. And you are actually, by making such movies, making us so thick-skinned to the fact that we can treat the women the way we are treating them, and the whole society accepts that. So, in a sense, from a cultural point of view, we accept the differences between women, which is unfortunate. Politically and of course economically, as the previous lecturer said, and which I am so much aware, whether it's a political representation in our country, which is I think less than about 10 to 14%. It's not like countries like, say, the Scandinavian countries or even Albania, where the women representation in the parliament is more than 50%. In fact, most of the developed countries now, more due to the fact of self-enterprise rather than policy, women are leading many countries, and we've seen very strong women, both in terms of our own prime minister, of course by a chance of birth, but like Indira Gandhi. But we have also seen people like Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel, who have led the world by example. So, so breaking the glass ceiling has not been very easy for women, whether it's political or economic. And economically, as my previous speaker very clearly elaborated, that there is a huge difference in the labor market in terms of the pay that is given to a woman when compared to a man for equal work done, and more so in the informal sector than in the formal sector. And even in the field of education, I'm afraid that there is a lot of inequality in terms of the stereotyping that women get. And women are like, made to believe that they're not so good in maths or science. And most of them are herded into things like maternal care, child care, rather than into, say, fields of, say, artificial intelligence, or into other fields which are considered to be masculine. So the definition of masculinity and femininity are also sort of stereotyped into education, which is a fact of life, and which is a very, very difficult stereotype that we need to address for the future. Now, I was also seeing a report on gender gaps in gender report, and the World Gender Report says that, which was also what I had expected, but it puts it in numbers, and it says that we are at about 68%, even if we consider the developed and then underdeveloped worlds, that women are about 60 to 68% of the equality of men. In the sense, they were projecting that if the current policies were to be followed, it will take about 108 years for a man and a woman to become equal, by sheer force of nature. And it will take about 100 years for equality to be there between man and woman, as per the current trends. So that's a very telling kind of a figure that we are talking about. Of course, our country, coming specifically to our country, we had a history of violence against women, probably, which may not be accepted. Of course, we glorify our past, but our country has also seen sati. It has seen laws, basic laws, like marriage laws or property laws, which have been weighed against the woman, whether it is religiously defined or whether it has been legally defined. It took a lot. Of course, India did not have the problem like the US. US got women suffrage rights or the political rights to vote in the year 1920. India got the rights right from independence. But then the rights as far as property was never with women, in the sense, if once the parents died, it was always like presumed that in our so-called patriarchal society, it's only the son who would get the property, because the daughter is anyway married away into a separate house. So that equality was never in terms of property. It was definitely not there in terms of the right to divorce, the right to equality in a marriage was also not there, because men were considered to be the breadwinners. And as rightfully said, that housework was never equated or quantified in terms of rights to equality in a marriage. So, so that property rights itself took, somebody like N.T. Ramarao in South to actually bring about equality in property rights, which later on, of course, the government of India accepted. Very, very, very ironical that despite having the first prime minister who was probably such a liberal, he couldn't get across in our first parliament the right to equality of women. And the father of our constitution, if you can say, Dr. Ambedkar, resigned on this very fact as a law minister, when he could not get across a bill in the parliament to give equal rights to women, both in terms of property and marriage. And so that's a much forgotten fact. But the first law minister of our country, the architect of our constitution, resigned as a minister from the parliament of this country, because we were not able to pass the bill for equal rights for women in both property as well as marriage. And anyway, it took a long period of time for that to happen. And it did happen. And of course, we still experience in our country cultural norms with regard to how women can be dressed, how she has to behave, how she, we have something called honor killings. Like, if you marry outside your caste, especially in some of the societies which are still culturally rigid, that a woman cannot marry outside her caste, outside her religion. We decide for her what she can do and what is the kind of norms that she needs to follow. So these are certainly cultural norms which still define the place of woman in our society, and it's not like there is full freedom given as far as the woman is concerned. In fact, purity of women has always been portrayed as a virtue in society, right from in movies, in society, in the way we behave, which is not the case as far as men are concerned. It's in men, it is considered to be flamboyancy. In the case of women, it's considered like, it's unacceptable. So there are obviously a lot of dual norms. In fact, I can say, as very rightly said, that when we design a policy, with men in the mind, and that happens to most of us, because we cannot think through what is it that a woman faces, that she would go through childbirth, she would be helpless. When we design, our classrooms, the fact that a child might have issues with regard to the fact that she has periods every month, that she will not be able to attend classes, she will miss out on classes, and therefore how do we ensure that there is equality in education, has not really been a center point of any education policy. many of the policies, and that's a fact. And so fortunately, maternal mortality rate perhaps would define, as they say, that if you were to invest in $1 in maternal mortality, maternal health, it would result in a $20 return if we are able to reduce our maternal mortality. And probably that rate actually indicates the development of a society. And unfortunately, we are not really very high, and there's so much amount of fatalities that we encounter because in maternal mortality. And also the sex ratio of boys to girls is high because most of us prefer a boy child to a girl child once when in any marriage. And that is still a cultural kind of outlook that we have, and it will require time. So there's the time to change political laws, to change economic laws, and to change cultural laws would need a tremendous push, and it'll gradually happen, just as inclusion and reservation have probably made a huge difference in the way the society is changing. Similarly, the reservation of women in various fields is slowly making a difference in the nature of policy, in the quality of decisions. And the West has realized, for example, NASDAQ says that there has to be cultural diversity. In most of the Western countries now, the boards have got to have diversity. Most of the universities would silently, without stigmatizing, have diversity, because they understand that leads to greater amount of quality. Even though initially it might be a push factor, later on it results in greater amount of quality. And therefore, these are the policies, I agree, have been half-baked and would require a lot more push from the policy makers. And that would happen only if women are there, and women are there not just as stakeholders, but women are there as vociferous stakeholders for their rights. Because many a time, unless and until the point is put forward, men may not even understand that this is an issue and this is where it has to be there. It's not that we don't have women who cannot be like judges or chief ministers or policy makers. They can be. There are so many qualified women. It's only that they don't get the opportunity or the right guidance, or don't have the godfathers to be there. So in fact, I personally also did a research to see as to what could be the most important factor for the development of a country or of a society. And in my personal research, in which I did a study and also published a paper, I did find that this significant factor that makes a difference to a society's development is education of women. And so if there is one factor that makes a difference and is a barometer for progress of a society, it is perhaps the amount of education, or the funds, or the kind of quality of education we are providing for the women. So in the state of Assam, of course, whenever in my discussions with the chief minister, I did put across this fact that it's the women education that you should focus on rather than anything else. And as you can see that we provide scooties for girl children who get first rank. Of course, this time there may be a provision for others too, but in general, we do provide more incentives for girl child, and that is a very, very welcome thing. Both in terms of minority scholarship for girl children, in terms of providing incentivization to study more, in terms of so many other things. And of course, there would be demands from the others, and that is for the policymakers or the highest level to decide. But till now, what I have seen is that we have been promoting a girl child education, girl child protection to a large extent. Fortunately, in the state of Assam, this is not the case across the country. Unfortunately, Assam is much better off in terms of gender parity as opposed to the rest of the country. Now, uh, I would only like to say that the laws as a policymaker that we have to make have to be more sensitive, have to be on this day. We are not talking in terms of just one day. This day is there to perhaps not to only celebrate the fact that women have turned around the corner and are no more, unequal partners like before. They're equal partners. In fact, they are probably uh, probably the partners who lead the way in many other places. I do hope that on this day we introspect. We introspect as to what we can do. Women's Day perhaps has to be celebrated every day, as Neelima Bhagat ma'am was saying. It has to be celebrated every day. But today is a day in which we need to think as to where are we, and do we really want to take another 100 years to reach where we should be, or can we shorten the journey from on the political, economic, cultural, educational fields? And in my humble opinion, I feel that the beginning has to be in education. And because children, when they are growing up, they don't know these differences. They believe they are equal. They grow up as equal. Perhaps they will be, the difference will come when they first, get their periods. But then how do we engender this equality through our teachers into the children, through the community? Because we are giving them a cultural baggage, a stereotype that they are not equal. And we make them fall off the school in terms of higher dropout rates, in terms of domestic works, in terms of other things. How do we, if we can protect that childhood and we can give those values of equality during the course of education, I'm sure they will flower into a society in which they will demand political, economic, and other rights and reach the rightful place, because that is not just is not just a goal, but a necessity for a more equitable society, and a society in which every individual should get an equal right and an equal place under the sun. If that is the goal, that we are born equal, then we definitely should make our journey of 100 years much shorter than what we are doing right now. So I think it's a time for us for introspection, and definitely on this day, I am there to make my little contribution in this regard. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. That was indeed an eye-opener. You started off by pointing out that historically gender equality was there and still continuing, and in fact it has become the norm, and we have kind of got conditioned into believing that, well, this is what is happening and this will continue to happen. We have taken it for granted. So like, if we want change to take place, we must look into the gaps, and as you have said that you did some research work, and you have also come up with a solution to some of these problems. And one of the area that you have highlighted, and I like it, yes, education. Education certainly can bring about transformative change, and I'm sure here Neelima ma'am will agree with me, and she will also have her own views on that. We can make that the starting point. And in regard to the other gaps, well, we need to introspect and see what each one of us can do to contribute to bring about this transformation. This is required. We have done enough of theorizing over the years. Now it is time to jump into action. That is actually the need of the hour. And that is what we would call true Women's Day celebration. If we on our part even take one bold step forward to bring about changes in our own lives and in the lives of the people living around us, women, girl, child, and all, I'm sure we can be positive that something good will happen in the future. So now the platform is open for discussion. Both the resource persons are here with us, and you have listened to some very good views, very good observations, very good insights from both of them. And now let us see what you need to know, what you want to hear from them. So please feel free, come forward and raise your queries.
Okay, let me break the ice. Kalyanji, let me break the ice. And the question is for you. Generally, we find women in the education sector, right from the primary stage to the higher education. There are more women than men. Okay, that's fine. Nothing to say about that. But what is your opinion regarding the gender, the job gap existing in the country? Why it is so much like, is it something is lacking in the women? Is it they are not skilled? Is it they require training? Like when I always go, practically when I also go to the secretariat or to the any office, I just find that why I don't find so many women as I go with expectations. I just want your opinion. The job gap, the job gap.
So I would just take the opportunity of your question to say a few important things. First and foremost, Assam is not very representative of rest of the country. The number of girls who are studying and the gender parity in Assam is much, much better than rest of the country. So in a sense, if you go to rest of the country, you will find much lesser number of girls. That is first point. And we are more fortunate than rest of the country because of various reasons, perhaps. The second thing is, yes, in spite of the fact that the gender parity is good, yet the number of women in the job sector would probably be less than men. And I dare say that if a man and woman are equally accomplished, an employer would go for a man than a woman. And that's because, again, of the stereotype that women would have a family to go back to, they'll have children to account for, to look after. And now that's a reality, and that's also a stereotype. And therefore, an employer would look and think that if I have to get the best out of my employee, then what do I do? If I want to take a woman, can I ask her to stay back? Now, we in our country, though we have work from maybe 9 to 5:30, etc., we don't end there. We take it up to 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the night. And therefore, since the working conditions are so unorganized, like it's almost like an unorganized, the organized sectors is like an unorganized sector. Therefore, and since the working conditions are so ill-defined, therefore, they find that a woman may not fit into that situation. This is again a thought process. And therefore, I do find that, though women are more qualified, they are less employed in the various sectors. But let me say, in terms of the future is for the women. The reason is, COVID has taught us a situation that you'll have to work from home. COVID has taught us a situation that the future is digital education. COVID has taught us a situation you can be anywhere and still do your work. Of course, there will be some hard work like logistics and in terms of factory work and manufacturing, etc. But increasingly, the world will become digital. Increasingly, things will be operated digitally. And when those kind of situations prevail in the future, you will definitely see that women will overtake men. Because in terms of focus, in terms of delivery, in terms of creativity, they're much more focused than men. I mean, not just socially, but perhaps even biologically. We find that they are able to deliver if they are in the comfort. If the comfort of the family and the fact that they naturally look after their children is taken care of, and they don't have to overstay, and they can actually work from home. I foresee a future in which women will dominate the workspace across all sectors. And the only thing is, we'll have to ensure that the girl child gets into the fields which she is right now not encouraged to, like STEM education, like science education, like mathematics, like into physics, which is the future of the world, and which is actually happening down south. She will dominate the workspace in times to come. This is my prediction for the future.
Okay, thank you. And another very small question, very small. You are an IITian. You just came out from IIM, a lawyer. You did so many studies, right? Plus, you're a sports person. Okay. So my question is, like Assam is doing right now very well in sports. Lots of, where potentialities has been, spotted and everything. But say from this organization, I'm just talking about CTEF, that besides we want to work holistically and we're working holistically for the student community to promote girls, a sports person, to come to the sports field. What did you suggest? How we should move?
So, ma'am, last year, we decided that we must introduce in every school. We should introduce a physical and a mental sport. We introduced chess and we introduced a physical sport like we introduced volleyball for girls. In fact, we also tried to make a girl the leader of the school. We tried to appoint a girl as the ambassador. The ambassadors of all school were girl ambassadors. So making them, making a physical sport which is accessible, which is not costly, making a mental sport like chess, giving them exposure to come and be in society, etc. Is one way I thought that we will be able to take them forward. And I think that from CTF also, getting the girls to participate will be a very important thing in order to bring out their potential holistically. I remember when I organized the World Women Boxing Championship, Mary Kom was still good, but I was one of the first few of them who introduced her to Tarun Gogoi, who sort of gave her some degree of patronization. And that time Vijender was also there. I remember I brought all the women boxers across the world to Guwahati, and we introduced, and then she was such a phenomenon that all girls saw that she is somebody who could be a world champion from here. Now we have Lavlina, and I met her. She's such a simple girl, but she is such an icon. I mean, looking at her, all the girls are so enthused to do so, and
Motivated.
I think that motivated to do better as far as. And I believe that the culturally, the women of Northeast are much more stronger socially, and I think if we were to promote sports and look at their holistic development, they will set a standard for the rest of the country to follow. So it's a great opportunity for CTF, for me in the education field, for us to focus on girl-child education, girl-child holistic development, both academic, scientific, as well as physical. And if we were to invest in that, of course, we have to be sustained. It can't be a one-year kind of a thing. Over a period of 10 to 15 years, we will catapult over the rest of the country if we were to focus on this area. Is my belief.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for showing us the way forward. I am also very interested in sports, so I'm naturally taking a lot of interest. So I think
we'll do it.
CTF can definitely take the initiative to conduct different kind of programs in collaboration with the girl childs in different schools and encourage them to come forward and participate in sports. Anyways,
and that's really very encouraging what you have said. And practically, I got more encouraged. I think about a month or two, the doctor, he's Utpal Datta, the principal of Handic College. He told me about you, that taking the initiative of women football team. So if it comes out if it clicks, really we'll be the most happiest. We'll be the most happiest persons if that is materialized. I do appeal to you that you please translate into action.
I'm sure sir will be giving us all the support that is required.
Yeah, he's a sports person himself. No, definitely his interest will be more in this. Wonderful person.
Right. So are there any questions? Any other questions from the participants for Dr. Rituparna? All are very silent. You have made them very introspective. I think all of them are very introspective, you know.
I would like to say a few words.
Yes, please.
Because, yes, I was thinking as to educate the children from childhood and give the values of, that equality from childhood. If we start in schools, value education in that manner, make it compulsory, I think that will play help in bringing a change. From childhood, you have to teach them the values of equality. What do you say, sir? What do you say, sir?
Absolutely, ma'am. In fact, we are introducing value education shortly in all the schools of Assam. The first period will be about values. And of course, it was more broad-based in terms of the fact that we are in this in this fast-paced world, we were losing values of togetherness, fraternity, or equality. But equality, gender equality, will obviously be a very important stream that will be a part of value education. I would request CTEF to be associated with the curriculum development with SCRT to see to it that when this value education actually is spans out, actually is rolled out, we ensure that the gender equality value systems are very strongly enshrined in that curriculum, because a child gets molded by that thought process. So as she rightly said, while we are putting value education, this need to ensure that the boy child and the girl child are made to think that they're equal at all points of time is enshrined in our value education curriculum. I think that's a very important thing that we need to do.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Rituparna, I just have a small, your opinion. I can see you on the screen. Practically, I feel, it is my own opinion, that we find our girls, most of the girls, they don't have that confidence, or losing the confidence, self-assertiveness, what we call it, or that, leadership. Is it due to the socialization pattern which is being followed? Do you think that?
Yes. Socialization has a big role to play. As actually sir has pointed out, that value education, ma'am has pointed out that value education has to be, given in schools, but that value education has to be inculcated at home as well. Exactly. So actually the parents, while giving, value education to the children at school, I think the parents of those children has to be also brought for a training day in school, to actually give them some form of training, that while you raise your child, if you have a boy child or a girl child, just don't differentiate them. If your child can, if your girl child can bring you a glass of water, similarly your boy child can also give you a glass of water. Only if you just stop differentiating them, that you are a boy and you are a girl, so then only the equality will start. So value education, giving them value education at home, I think, in school is not enough. The parents, we should also be equally aware of that.
Practically in the
the socio-religious programs which we have in our families, they are very male-centric,
yes, exactly.
Male-centric, and nobody nobody can actually even I obey those whatever socio-religious customs are there in my house. Even if I go to question them, then I am being actually left out, because it is we shouldn't actually question them. We should actually follow them. I do not question the process. I question the differentiation between a man and a boy. If a man can do it, why not a girl? Why not a girl? So the process of I do respect the process, but for the example, the Shraddha ceremony or the Mukha Agni, which are actually, if somebody dies at our home, it is always the boy, the son, who is actually allowed to do that. If the family doesn't have a son, then the daughter is not allowed. Somebody, the brother, or the person's brother, or even the nephew will go to do perform the son. But at that point of time, I think it is the daughter's responsibility to do it. But if the daughter is quite assertive and she goes to do it, then she is actually bad mouthed. She is not taken as a part of the society. So these are the things we need to follow the rituals, not against the rituals. But the small subtle discrimination that has between boys and girls, those should be returned. I think we are in the 21st century. God will even forgive that if a girl does those rituals. So my thinking is that way.
No, that's right.
Actually,
like in other states, like it's a matriarchal society, right? In Northeast. So this problem doesn't arise over there. And being over here, let me in our own state, like this consultative, but still, the thing is, the more, equality is there. The children, like do this, you don't do that. That kind of thing they don't have. But here, what is happening, this consultative is gradually diminishing in Assam. I've seen in case of some people, it's gradually, practically the present generation.
Yeah, I agree with ma'am. I agree with ma'am, because it varies from family to family also. Because one of my sister-in-law has 3 daughters. So when the father passed away, all the rites and everything were performed by the daughters. So that is okay. That is acceptable. Nobody questioned. They took that bold step.
It's gradually.
So it all depends on our way of thinking.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody, any question? It is only we are talking.
So anyway, but looking at the time, I think
it's over.
Yes,
Thank you, ma'am.
Almost. I think we should be wrapping up now. And so now, thanks to both the speakers. I don't know how the time passed. Exactly. You have given us so much food for thought, and this was truly a very wonderful Women's Day celebration in a sense, because you have given us food for thought, and we'll have to take that forward now. Implement it, not leave it in theories. Implement it in whatever way.
And I just want to add it. We have been celebrating Women's Day for over 100 years now. Yes. I think it should be gender day, I think, rather than
gender day.
Rituparna, breaking the ice itself, the theme of this year's International Women's Day itself sends out that message. The things are the same as it used to be. So breaking the biases means what, The biases were there earlier, still now, and we are being asked to, break the barriers. Anyways, but we will do it. We will do it. We'll do it, and it needs to be redefined. It needs to be redefined.
Redefined.
I think redefined now. International Gender Day.
So on this,
maybe it will come soon.
On this positive note,
let us
optimistic note, I request Devastu to take the program forward now.
Okay, thank you. So I'd be offering the words of thanks. On behalf of CTEF Assam, I thank our chief guest for today, Dr. Kalyan B. Chakravarti, sir, for gracing today's seminar. Thank you, sir, for your very thought-provoking and interesting address. I'd like to thank our distinguished guest of honor, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharya ma'am, for making an excellent presentation and making this webinar a very meaningful and interesting one. My heartfelt gratitude to Professor Nilima Bhagavati ma'am, Chairman CTEF Assam Chapter, for your continuous guidance, motivation, and moral support. Next, I'd like to express a deep sense of gratitude to Dr. Archana Bhattacharya ma'am, Vice Chairman, Assam Chapter, CTEF, for your untiring efforts in making this webinar a very resounding success. I offer my heartfelt thanks to esteemed members of CTEF, Assam Chapter, for your support and cooperation in making the webinar a great success. I thank all guests present for sparing your time to attend and participate in today's webinar. I especially thank Gratia Technology for providing the technical support in making this webinar a success. Thank you all once again for your cordial cooperation. Thank you.
Now, I would just like to add to that. So on behalf of
Gratia.
CTEF Assam, I would like to thank Debastuti Sharma
Thank
also
you.
for
Thank you,
doing a
ma'am.
wonderful job in the anchoring part and also right up to the end offering the vote of thanks. So a big thank you to you also.
Thank you so
And,
much. My privilege.
let us not forget Gratia. Gratia.
Yeah, I have thanked Gratia.
yeah.
I have thanked Gratia especially.
They are
And
with us all the time.
yes, I have thanked for all the technical support Gratia has given to us all along actually. So with this, we have almost come to the end of today's webinar. So before ending, I request Gratia Technology to play the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
You're muted, Debastuti, you're muted.
The two speakers really, it was excellent presentation. It will be, again, we'll put it in YouTube so that everybody can see. And next thing, we'll be in touch with Kailanji. You are a big support to us. And definitely, along with education, we are going to take sports. And this is, I assure you today, and you have to guide us. You guide us and we'll take the direction. We have to bring the girls out. Okay, that will be really great.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
So I think we can declare that the webinar, this
It's
international
closed.
webinar has finally come to an end, and it's come. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone, and good night.
Good night.